But the patience. Caitlin Clark has scored the last 9 points.
What started as a rookie storyline has now exploded into something the WNBA has never experienced before. Caitlin Clark is no longer just a basketball player entering her second season with the Indiana Fever. She has become the center of a full-scale sports media revolution that is changing the business, visibility, and cultural relevance of women's basketball in real time before the world's eyes. The announcement itself sounded almost impossible when it first dropped. 44 games. Every single Indiana Fever game. National television from start to finish. No hidden broadcasts buried on random regional stations. No games forgotten on obscure channels nobody can find. Every night, every matchup, every arena. Broadcast across America like a primetime event the sports world cannot afford to miss. And the moment fans heard it, the internet exploded instantly. Because this has never happened before in WNBA history. Not even close. For decades, national television exposure in the WNBA was something reserved only for a handful of marquee matchups each season. Even championship teams struggled to consistently land primetime slots. Most franchises would celebrate getting 10 or maybe 12 nationally televised games in an entire season. The elite organizations with superstars and championship banners hanging from the rafters might push that number slightly higher on exceptional years. But 44 nationally televised games? An entire season covered from beginning to end? That wasn't normal. That wasn't expected. That wasn't even considered realistic until now. Then Caitlin Clark arrived, and suddenly the entire system changed overnight. Networks are no longer treating the Indiana Fever like just another basketball team. They are treating them like a national attraction. ESPN wants them. ABC wants them. CBS wants them. NBC wants them. Amazon Prime wants them. Every major network suddenly realized the exact same thing at the exact same time. Whenever Caitlin Clark steps onto a basketball court, people stop what they are doing and watch. That realization has completely transformed the WNBA business model faster than anyone thought possible. This is not happening because Indiana has been dominating the league for years. They have not. This is not happening because the Fever suddenly became a historic dynasty overnight. They didn't. And this certainly is not happening because Indiana became the biggest sports market in America out of nowhere. The real reason is far more powerful than any of those things. Caitlin Clark has become the single biggest ratings magnet women's basketball has ever seen. The numbers behind her rise are absolutely staggering. During her rookie season, television audiences skyrocketed whenever she played. Games involving Clark were suddenly pulling viewership numbers the league had not seen in decades. Arenas that normally struggled to fill seats started selling out within minutes whenever the Fever came to town. Ticket prices exploded. Merchandise sales erupted. Social media engagement shattered expectations. Highlight clips featuring Clark flooded TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and sports shows across the country every single night. And the craziest part? This all happened before she had even fully adjusted to the professional game. Think about how insane that actually is for a second. Most rookies enter a league quietly, develop slowly, and spend years earning attention. Caitlin Clark walked into the WNBA and immediately became the center of the entire sports conversation. She didn't slowly grow into stardom. She arrived as a cultural event. The effect has been so overwhelming that even casual sports fans who never watched women's basketball before are suddenly tuning in regularly just to see what she might do next. One deep three-pointer from the logo. One impossible no-look pass through traffic point, one electric fourth-quarter takeover. Every Fever game suddenly feels unpredictable, dramatic, and must-watch. And networks know exactly what that means. Viewers equal money. Attention equals power. Ratings equal leverage. That is why broadcasters are treating Indiana Fever games like premium sports entertainment instead of niche programming. They understand something the entire sports industry is finally realizing in real time. Caitlin Clark is no longer just popular inside women's basketball. She has crossed over into mainstream sports superstardom. That kind of crossover power is incredibly rare. The comparison many analysts are quietly starting to make behind the scenes is early career LeBron James. Not because they play exactly alike, but because of the gravitational force they create around the sport itself. When LeBron entered the NBA, the league transformed around him. National broadcasts increased. Merchandise exploded. Ticket sales surged everywhere he played. Entire franchises became relevant simply because he existed. Now people are watching a similar phenomenon unfold around Caitlin Clark in the WNBA. The impact stretches far beyond ratings too. This is where things become genuinely shocking. Superstar athletes don't just attract fans. They attract other stars. Veteran players across the league are suddenly paying attention to Indiana in ways nobody expected 2 years ago. Free agents want to play there. Veterans want to join the movement. Experienced champions see something growing around Clark that feels bigger than basketball itself. That is superstar gravity. The Fever are no longer rebuilding quietly in the background. They are becoming the center of the league's universe. Every road game feels like an event. Every arena becomes packed. Every opposing team suddenly experiences its highest attendance of the season when Indiana comes to town. The economic impact alone is transforming franchises around the league. Teams are literally moving games into larger arenas because demand to see Caitlin Clark is becoming too massive for normal venues to handle. That kind of influence is almost unheard of for a second-year player. And what makes the situation even more unbelievable is how quickly it all happened. The WNBA spent years fighting for mainstream attention, trying to increase visibility, secure larger broadcast deals, and create stronger connections with casual audiences. Then one player entered the league, and suddenly decades of growth accelerated almost overnight. The conversation shifted instantly from, can the WNBA become mainstream, to, how big can this actually get now? That is a monumental difference. This is no longer just about basketball games being televised. This is about a league entering a completely new era of relevance. Sponsors are paying attention. Media companies are paying attention. Celebrities are paying attention. Investors are paying attention. And most importantly, millions of brand new fans are paying attention. The old rules have officially been shattered. For years, women's basketball stars had greatness, but lacked consistent national spotlight. Now the spotlight is impossible to avoid. The Indiana Fever are becoming the face of an entirely new sports movement, and Caitlin Clark is standing directly at the center of it all. Every logo three-pointer, every sold-out crowd, every viral highlight, every nationally televised matchup. It is all building towards something much larger than a single season. This isn't just hype anymore. This is a transformation happening live on national television every single night. The transformation happening around Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever is no longer just about hype. It is no longer about viral highlights or sold-out arenas alone. What we are witnessing now is something much deeper, much bigger, and honestly far more historic than most people fully realize yet. Because when championship veterans start choosing one franchise over every other option available, the league itself starts telling you where the future is heading. That is exactly what is happening in Indiana right now. Veteran stars with championship resumes, MVP experience, and years of success are suddenly looking around the WNBA landscape and arriving at the same conclusion independently. If you want to be part of the next great movement in women's basketball, you go play with Caitlin Clark. That is why players like Natasha Howard matter so much in this story. Howard is not some desperate veteran searching for one final roster spot before retirement. She is a proven champion, a respected leader, a player who understands exactly what winning basketball looks like at the highest level. And out of every possible destination in the league, she chose Indiana. That decision speaks louder than any headline ever could. Because experienced professionals see what is happening behind the scenes before the public fully catches on. They see the crowds exploding inside every arena the Fever enter. They see television ratings skyrocketing every time Clark touches the floor. They see endorsement money flooding toward the franchise. They see cameras following the team everywhere. They see little girls showing up in Clark jerseys by the thousands. They see something transforming in real time. Most importantly, they see a superstar capable of making everyone around her better instantly. That changes everything. Basketball history has shown this pattern over and over again for decades. Once a truly generational player emerges, the entire ecosystem of the sport begins reorganizing itself around them. Veterans suddenly take discounts to join them. Free agents suddenly become interested in cities they ignored before. Role players suddenly want to fit themselves into that system because they understand the opportunity attached to it. When LeBron James created his empire in Miami, veterans lined up for the chance to chase championships beside him. When Stephen Curry transformed the Golden State Warriors into a dynasty, players across the NBA wanted to become part of that movement immediately. Even superstars adjusted their careers to align themselves with the gravity Curry created. Now the WNBA is experiencing its own version of that phenomenon through Caitlin Clark. And the speed of it is honestly shocking. What usually takes years to develop is happening almost instantly. Players who once privately questioned whether Clark's popularity was overblown are now realizing something uncomfortable but undeniable. The attention is real. The audience is real. The business growth is real. And attaching yourself to that momentum might be the smartest career decision possible in today's WNBA. That is the true definition of a generational superstar. Not just someone who scores points. Not just someone who trends online. But someone whose presence literally changes how franchises operate, how players make decisions, and how the league itself evolves around them. And when you actually look closely at Indiana's roster construction, the situation becomes even more dangerous for the rest of the league. Because this is not just a one-player show anymore. This roster is being built with purpose. Every piece fits together strategically around Clark's unique skill set in ways that make the Fever terrifyingly difficult to defend when everything clicks. You start with Aaliyah Boston, one of the most dominant young post players in basketball. Boston gives Indiana physicality, rebounding, rim protection, and interior scoring that perfectly complements Clark's perimeter brilliance. While Clark stretches defenses far beyond the three-point line, Boston punishes teams inside the paint. Together, they form the classic guard-big combination that has powered championship teams throughout basketball history. Then there is Kelsey Mitchell, one of the most explosive scorers in the league. Mitchell's ability to create offense instantly prevents defenses from focusing entirely on Clark. The moment teams overload toward Caitlin, Mitchell becomes lethal attacking open space. Suddenly defenders are trapped in impossible decisions every possession. Double Clark and Mitchell burns you. Collapse on Boston, and Clark punishes you from deep. Help two aggressively on Mitchell, and Boston dominates the interior. Everything connects. Everything flows. Everything feeds off the gravity Clark creates naturally with the ball in her hands. That is what separates real contenders from teams built entirely on hype. The Fever are beginning to look less like a rebuilding franchise and more like a complete basketball ecosystem designed for sustained dominance. They have perimeter shooting, interior presence, veteran leadership, defensive versatility, transition offense, star power, marketability, chemistry, energy. And sitting at the center of all of it is the most magnetic athlete women's basketball has ever produced. That combination is terrifying for the rest of the WNBA because it means Indiana's rise might only be beginning. Now zoom out even further and look at the bigger picture unfolding around the entire sport. Because the timing of all this feels almost unreal. The WNBA is entering a completely new financial era with massive media rights deals worth billions of dollars. Networks are suddenly investing heavily because they know audiences are finally showing up consistently. Sponsors that ignored women's basketball for years are now desperately trying to attach themselves to the league before they miss the explosion completely. Merchandise sales are breaking records. Ticket demand is exploding. Secondary market prices are climbing to levels once reserved only for major NBA matchups. And right at the exact moment the league reaches this turning point, Caitlin Clark arrives. That timing changes everything. Women's basketball has always had elite talent. It has always had incredible athletes. It has always had greatness. What it lacked was a cultural crossover moment powerful enough to force the mainstream sports world to pay attention all at once. Now that moment is here. Young girls are discovering the WNBA for the first time through Caitlin Clark highlights flooding social media every night. Families are sitting together watching women's basketball regularly. Casual fans who previously ignored the league are suddenly emotionally invested. The conversation has shifted permanently from whether women's basketball deserves attention to just how massive this movement can become moving forward. That is a historic shift, and it raises an even bigger question that nobody feels fully comfortable answering yet. Are we watching the beginning of one of the greatest basketball careers ever? Not just one of the greatest WNBA careers. One of the greatest careers in the history of basketball itself, regardless of gender. Because culturally, the impact already feels enormous. Most legendary athletes spend years building influence before reaching the level Clark has already achieved. Yet somehow, during the earliest stages of her professional career, she is already carrying the weight of an entire sport's transformation on her shoulders. That kind of pressure destroys most athletes mentally. The expectations are almost impossible. Every game becomes a national event. Every performance becomes a debate. Every statistic becomes a headline. Every mistake becomes viral. Every success becomes historic. The spotlight surrounding her is relentless. And somehow, through all the chaos, she keeps delivering. She keeps hitting impossible shots. She keeps breaking records. She keeps drawing millions of viewers. She keeps making the impossible look normal. That is what makes this moment feel so different from ordinary sports hype cycles. This does not feel temporary anymore. It feels structural, permanent, transformational. The Indiana Fever are no longer just entering another season. They are stepping into a spotlight powerful enough to reshape an entire league forever. And Caitlin Clark is standing directly at the center of that storm as the cameras keep rolling. Which leaves one final question hanging over women's basketball right now. When the dust finally settles years from now, will people remember this season as simply a turning point for the WNBA? Or as the exact moment the entire sport transformed forever? And that is where this story becomes almost impossible to fully comprehend in real time. Because if everything we have already seen somehow feels historic, the truly terrifying part for the rest of the league is this. Caitlin Clark might still be nowhere close to her final form yet. That is the detail hiding underneath all the headlines, all the sold-out arenas, all the viral clips, and all the non-stop media attention. People are acting like they're already watching a finished product when, in reality, this may only be the beginning stages of something far larger than anyone currently understands. Think about it carefully. Most players spend their first professional seasons simply trying to survive. They struggle with the speed of the game. They struggle physically. They struggle mentally adjusting to pressure, travel, expectations, and constant scrutiny. Rookies are usually overwhelmed long before they ever dominate. But Caitlin Clark entered the WNBA carrying impossible expectations from day one and still managed to completely alter the economics, visibility, and popularity of the entire league almost immediately. That should not even be possible. And yet somehow, every week, the phenomenon keeps growing bigger instead of slowing down. Every arena she enters feels different now. Crowds show up hours before tip-off just to watch warm-ups. Young fans press against tunnels hoping for a quick autograph or even 1 second of eye contact. Cameras follow every movement. Commentators dissect every possession. Opposing teams suddenly treat regular season games against Indiana like playoff events because they understand the entire country is watching. That level of pressure usually crushes athletes. Instead, Clark seems to feed off it. The deeper the spotlight gets, the more comfortable she appears becoming inside it. That is the sign of someone built differently. That is the sign of a player whose confidence starts bending the emotional energy inside entire arenas. And what makes her so dangerous is not just the shooting. Yes, the logo threes are ridiculous. Yes, the impossible deep-range shots break defenses psychologically before games even begin. But the real engine behind her superstardom is the way she sees the floor, like she is operating 2 steps ahead of everyone else at all times. There are moments watching Clark where it genuinely feels like defenders are reacting to the present while she is already processing the future. One hesitation dribble, and suddenly a passing lane appears nobody else on earth even noticed existed. One quick glance at the weak side, and the defense collapses into chaos. One transition push, and the entire tempo of the game changes instantly. That is not normal basketball IQ. That is generational vision. And when you combine that kind of playmaking with unlimited shooting range, relentless competitiveness, and a personality fearless enough to embrace the spotlight instead of hiding from it, you create something sports leagues dream about for decades, but rarely ever receive. A transformational superstar. The WNBA has had legends before. Incredible legends. Championship dynasties. MVPs. Hall of Famers. Icons who carried women's basketball through years when the sport did not receive nearly the respect it deserved. But what feels different now is the scale, the reach, the mainstream gravity. For the first time, it feels like women's basketball has collided directly with pop culture, sports media, social media, celebrity culture, and mainstream entertainment simultaneously all at once. And Caitlin Clark somehow became the face of that explosion almost overnight. That is why this season carries such enormous weight historically. Because this is no longer just about wins and losses anymore. This is about the future ceiling of the entire sport. Networks are betting billions that this momentum is sustainable. Sponsors are investing massive money believing the audience will continue growing. Teams are expanding marketing departments. Arenas are upgrading experiences. Merchandise is flying off shelves faster than supply can keep up. Everyone is reacting to the same reality. The WNBA is entering a new era financially, culturally, and globally. And right in the center of that storm stands the Indiana Fever. But with greatness comes something else too. Expectations. Massive expectations. Now, every game matters differently. Every playoff run will be judged historically. Every disappointing performance will become national conversation fuel. Every injury scare will send panic across the league. Every rivalry will be magnified beyond reason. Because once a player reaches this level of fame, they stop belonging only to their team. They become part of the entire sports culture itself. That is where Caitlin Clark is now. People are no longer simply watching her to see whether Indiana wins. They are watching because it feels like they are witnessing the beginning of a sports era they will someday tell future generations about. The same feeling existed when Michael Jordan was transforming basketball globally in the 1990s. The same feeling existed when Tiger Woods exploded into golf and suddenly made millions of people care about a sport they previously ignored. The same feeling existed when Serena Williams dominated tennis while reshaping the image of what greatness looked like for an entire generation. Those athletes became bigger than their sports. And now people are starting to wonder whether Caitlin Clark is entering that same category, which is an almost unbelievable thing to say about someone this early in their professional career. But the evidence keeps piling up higher every month. Record ratings, record attendance, record merchandise sales, record media attention, 44 nationally televised games. Entire franchises changing strategies because of one player's existence. Veteran stars reorganizing their careers around the opportunity to play beside her. None of that happens accidentally. That happens when a league discovers a once-in-a-generation force powerful enough to alter its trajectory permanently. And maybe the wildest part of all this is that the story still feels unfinished.